can't stop. Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Alright guys, I'm pretty sure you guys know the current Boruto arc is coming to an end, and at this particular point a lot of people are speculating about what the next arc is going to be about. Now in this video I'm going to be doing the exact same thing. Now I know a lot of you guys want to see the Code arc being adapted into the Boruto anime. Specifically it's the current arc that's going on in the Boruto manga, and I want to take a look to see exactly how viable that right there could possibly be. The main reason why the Boruto writers don't necessarily want the Boruto manga arcs being adapted to the Boruto anime quickly because they don't necessarily want the anime to surpass the Boruto manga, and at this particular time the manga is give or take about 15 chapters ahead of the Boruto anime. And of course this right here has happened before in the past. Specifically, if you guys don't necessarily recall, there's like a gap in the Boruto anime in between the Chunin exam and the Mujino Bandits arc. Specifically in the Boruto manga though, that right there was just about one chapter. That was chapter 10 to chapter 11. But in the Boruto anime, that was about a solid 3-year gap in between the two. Now, my personal opinion, I don't necessarily think the Boruto writers want to do that again for a couple of reasons. I think one of the biggest reasons is the fact that the manga is probably going to go into a time skip after this arc, and that right there gives the manga a lot of time to, of course, jump ahead of the Boruto anime. And not only that, I'm pretty sure the Boruto writers kind of seen the backlash from that huge hiatus before prior. So I don't necessarily think that they want to replicate that totally. But regardless, the biggest thing that we should be looking at has to be the gap between the Boruto manga and the Boruto anime when the anime starts to cover more manga content. If you guys don't necessarily recall, the manga content essentially started, I give it, during the Hozuki Castle arc. That right there was like the precursor to actual Mujino Bandits arc, which was chapter 11 in the Boruto manga. Now at that particular point, there is about a 30 chapter gap between the Boruto manga and the Boruto anime. So the Boruto anime were kind of giving the backstory about chapter 11 while the Boruto manga was on chapter 41. Now as I said before, I don't necessarily expect the 30 chapter gap to be needed for the Boruto anime to start adapting some more Boruto manga content. Because of that, I think it's a decent chance that in the next arc we could possibly be getting some precursors to that actual manga arc. Now real quick, before I continue on with that, if you guys aren't necessarily completely familiar with the current state of the Boruto anime right now, the current arc is supposed to be ending in about, let's say, 3 episodes. Now the episode after that, the 4th episode, is probably going to be a Chocho episode. We already seen the spoilers. It's going to be a Chocho episode. Now I'm not necessarily sure if that's going to be a full arc onto itself. I don't necessarily expect it to be anything too insane. If you guys aren't necessarily too familiar with the Boruto anime, usually a lot of their arcs aren't necessarily like what we're seeing right now. Usually a lot of the Boruto anime arcs are about 3 to 4 episodes, sometimes even 5 to 6 episodes, and especially in Chocho's case, it might even be 1, 2, or 3 episodes. So hypothetically, if we're talking about the new arc, that right there should potentially start in about 6 to 8 weeks. In manga time, that's about 2 more chapters, so we could safely say there'd be about a 17-month gap between the manga and the anime at that particular time. That right there, in my personal opinion, definitely seems very appealing. That right there, in my opinion, definitely seems like a very good time for the Boruto anime to start adapting some stuff from the Boruto manga. Just to lay out my expectations real quick, I think that there's going to be an anime only arc. Now the anime only arc in itself, I don't expect it to be like the current arc or like a Chocho arc. I expect it to be similar to the Hozuki Castle arc. If you guys aren't necessarily too familiar with the Hozuki Castle arc, it essentially gave a lot of backstory about what exactly happened in chapter 11. That right there in itself kind of widened the gap between the Boruto manga and the Boruto anime, while also filling the audience in on some very valuable information. One of the things that was left off on in chapter 55 was something very, very significant. Of course, the Otsutsuki God. This right here was the exact same time when Code essentially realized that Ishiki Otsutsuki was actually dead. And of course, Ishiki Otsutsuki imparted a message onto Code, essentially telling him to go to dimension, absorbing a bunch of god trees, and of course, eventually becoming the Otsutsuki God. Now, I'm not necessarily going to flat out give my predictions and say this right here is going to happen, but this right here is an expectation. In my personal opinion, I think it's time. And a very good idea for this arc could potentially be to explore Code's dynamic with Ishiki Otsutsuki, because of course the manga arc is going to be about Code, and of course a lot of people want to know a bit more about Code, and of course how he met Jigen and also became part of the Kata organization, but also a little bit of explanation about the Otsutsuki God. And even if it's not like as overt as, let's say, a Kage Otsutsuki arc back in Naruto Shippuden, where we got to see the full backstory with Hagoromo and Hammer and things such as that. Even if it's not that, at least drop some hints that actually do lead towards Code, do lead towards Ishiki Otsutsuki and the Kata organization. If you guys recall, back in, let's say, the first 15 episodes, of course, that right there in itself had a very important plot point. Boruto's Jogan was on the forefront, but also on the back burners as well. We've seen multiple clips and multiple scenes of Otsutsuki members. Toneri Otsutsuki made an appearance, Momoshiki made an appearance, Kinshiki Otsutsuki made an appearance. At that time, Sasuke was very scarce. We seen Sasuke and Naruto make an appearance for like the first time in the series. We seen them for the first time together in the series. A bunch of things like that can actually happen, even if hypothetically the current arc isn't necessarily diving completely into that. And I personally believe at this particular point, it would be an absolutely impeccable time for them to actually add in at least some hints. I think it should be a full-blown arc explaining a bunch of the backstory in regards to Code, Jigen, and of course the Otsutsuki God. But hypothetically, if it's not that, we should at least start to see a bunch of hints. Now, of course, I definitely do have to bring up the possibility that we get a flat-out anime-only arc. Now, of course, this is worst case scenario in my personal opinion, because I think a lot of people as of right now want to see something. But hypothetically, if we have to have an anime only arc, a couple of things need to happen. We need to have a training arc. One of the things that I have been talking about over the past couple of days is, of course, Sarada. Sarada in the Boruto manga as of right now has 3 tomos, but Sarada in the Boruto anime as of right now only has 2 tomos. Hypothetically, if she doesn't necessarily unlock her 3rd tomo in this particular arc, of course we do have 3 more episodes in this arc. Hypothetically, if she doesn't necessarily unlock it in this particular arc, the next arc has to be an arc where she unlocks her 3rd tomo. And not only that, in this quote-unquote mysterious next anime only arc, I would definitely like to see a training arc. And in my personal opinion, they have to be learning something of substance. I think a lot of people would definitely like to see a training arc where we incorporate a lot of the old school characters with the new school characters. In my personal opinion, that right there would definitely be a very good idea to potentially extend the manga's lead on the Boruto anime. Not only that, if we're just scrapping that, I would definitely like to see an Otsutsuki arc. Like, I feel like these are things that we've always talked about, but they never really came through to fruition in regards to the Boruto anime. And hypothetically, again, if they do have a very, let's say, anime only arc, they have to make it a very popular arc amongst the Boruto fans. And I think those 2 arcs right there are probably going to be some of the most popular arcs that a lot of the Boruto fans just flat out want to see. But of course, this is a discussion. I definitely do want to know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys have the same expectations? My expectations, I expect something in regards to the Boruto manga. I don't necessarily expect a one-to-one adaptation of the Boruto manga to the Boruto anime, but I expect something, a precursor to that in my personal opinion. But if it's not that, I would still expect at least something of substance. Let's say, again, Sarada unlocking her 2nd tomo, them going on a training arc, or of course an Otsutsuki backstory arc. That right there, in my personal opinion, would probably be the best case scenario. But let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. But it's me, your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.